Alright, let's go ahead. We're just going to get started. So if someone else jumps in later, we can include them in. So, alright, well, welcome. You guys made it to week 2. Made it to week 2. How you guys feeling? Good. You know what's going on? Any questions? I'll keep this open here.
Did we have the pay thing up there? Did I just miss the memo on that?
Which one?
The putting in hours and things like that. Or are we still working on that?
You should have it in your project folder. Okay. It should be in there.
I'm gonna do that.
Let's see. Alright. So go ahead and get started. So what week is it? You guys are going to find that as we go throughout the... Let's close laptops if we're not taking notes or anything. Just so we're all paying attention. This is everything we're going to go over today is really important. And it's really critical that you guys know where we're at, what's going on. So that way you're not messaging us asking the same questions later on. So what week is it? We're going to do this every single workshop because like we were saying at the beginning, we live and die by this calendar. It's extremely important that we're staying up to it and following it. So if you guys ever feel confused, you don't know what's going on, calendar is always a great place to look. You can find it in your intern resources folder on the Google Drive. So as we know, it's week 2. Go to the next slide then. So if we zoom in a little bit, you guys know last week we just had, you got your project assignments. I'm sure you guys probably had your team meetings then. You should have already done some of the background research on who your client is. I know some of you guys haven't gotten your scopes yet, and that's okay. It's just kind of what happens sometimes. Different companies have like internal checks and whatever, so sometimes they come on just a little bit late. But you should still be able to start researching. And then you should have been able to have a first client call or an email if you've got your scope yet. So now we're on week 2, which is some of you are having your first client meetings. We have, I think, 3 or so scheduled today already. So that's great. And then you should also be working on drafting your research plan, doing those bullet points, just brainstorming what data you're going to think you're going to need, how you think you can find it. Obviously, it's going to have to change. And then a research strategy meeting with your project manager and then Will is definitely something you're going to want because we'll help you refine that research plan. Will knows a lot about how to get certain data or better ways to do certain projects as well. So be sure to set those up. Junior analysts, if you guys can set those up once you've had your first consultation, go ahead and set up your strategy meeting with your project manager and with Will. And then looking forward for week 3, we'll be doing a draft of a survey. That's if you are doing some form of a survey for your project. If you don't have a survey, it doesn't seem like you're going to need it. It does not apply to you, obviously. And then obviously you're going to want to distribute that survey if you have one. We don't want to wait too long to distribute those because the longer they sit out there, then the better and more data you'll get. And then as well as developing list of contacts. Just going through, starting to get the basic bits of research going so that way you know who you're calling and where it's all going. You guys have any questions?
Just project manager and Will at the same time?
Yeah, same meeting, one meeting, same time. Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, yes. Ryan?
The write-up of company and industry background due Wednesday at 9 a.m. Is there a particular format for that? Or
we haven't got over that, so let's see. Don't worry about that right now. We might change that. You can disregard that one right now.
Just do that research so you can be prepared for your client meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the write-up will be something different later.
Yeah, don't worry about it right up right now.
Yeah.
Thank you. I missed that.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have any other questions? Anyone confused? No. Okay. Great. So if you got your meeting, that's great. We're going to go over a couple of different little housekeeping things, and then we're going to be talking about having those first meetings, some little different tips and tricks that kind of go along with those. So just some housekeeping. Make sure that you're checking your Slack messages. Your notifications should be turned on in the app. That way you shouldn't be missing any messages. As well as be sure to respond to them. So like if your project manager or Will, someone sends you a message and you read it and you're like, okay, I got that. Excuse me. But you don't respond. We don't know that you got it. So please let's just say like got it, working on it, or something along those lines, just so that we know that you're seeing our communication. Just makes everything run much more smoothly, because we have like over 50 interns that we're trying to coordinate with and work with, and we always just can't keep track of everyone completely. So it just helps us a lot and helps your team a lot, so that way you guys know everyone's on the same page, because it gets crazier throughout the semester.
I would just add that I know like some of you are waiting for your project scopes or waiting for client meetings. And so it could be easy to just say, oh, there's nothing going on right now, so I'll just set Slack to the side. Just make sure you keep checking it, because you never know when something will come up. That's important.
Yeah, that's a great one. Okay, another thing with client meetings, so going on the internship calendar, I think we already had a little bit of confusion, people overlapping them, so we've had like 2 scheduled at the same time. The reason that's not okay is because Will needs to be at all the different client meetings, so they have to be separate, so he can, he can't be at 2 places at the same time, of course. So just a little refresher of the calendar, in case you're wondering how it works, or how to set something on the internship calendar. So on your calendar, just pick a time. You can, on your left, you can toggle calendars on and off. So you can add your project manager and Will's calendar and your teammates. And then you just want to pick your spot, go into edit event. In the event title, be sure to say the name of your project, or else we see like 12 client meetings and we don't know which one's which. I think it's really confusing. So be sure to just say, like, if this is, I'll just put like LNL, and I just put like first, and spell it right, Oops. All right, whatever. First client meeting. And then you can over here add people. And then the most important thing is right here, I want to make sure I pick the internship Alps advanced calendar. That way it shows up on there. And when I'm looking at times, I need to have the internship Alps advanced calendar open so I can see when there's open times, or else Will gets double booked and then it doesn't work out. So that's just a quick refresh.
Is there like a max time that you want us to schedule?
For these meetings with Will, just do normal business hours. So don't go past 5 unless if there's like absolutely no other time and you have to do like at 6 and the client, it's like in maybe California, so they're an hour behind. You can talk to Will and see if it's okay with him. But don't go past 5 p.m. unless you clear it with Will or your client. So just be wary if your client's like more East Coast, then obviously take that into consideration as well. Do you guys have any questions on the calendar? No? Okay. So then going back. Cool. Another thing, looking on the weekly calendar, something that you guys should be doing is having weekly team meetings, whether it's online or in person. But somehow you guys should be sitting down with everyone once a week, making sure that everyone's on the same page and that everyone's got a specific role that they're playing in that team and that they know what they're working on. So JAs, that's your prime responsibility. Make sure that you have a recurring time, find a time that works for everyone, and just keep it at that if it works for you guys. And then going similarly alongside that, another weekly meeting that we'll be having for the junior analysts. It's just a 2-person meeting, so it'll be the junior analyst and then the project manager. And so that's weekly as well. So the project managers and the Js will need to be coordinating with each other to make sure that we're sitting down with you guys for usually they're about 30 to 60 minutes per week, just to make sure that you guys know what you're doing and that if you have any questions or anything that comes up. And then just one last thing, just to help you guys know and understand that we never give busy work. And I know you guys have your classes and weird long readings and stuff where you're like, I don't get why would I do this assignment and so forth. We don't do anything like that here. So everything that we give you guys has a purpose for your benefit. It all comes back from, we've been doing this for quite a long time now, and we've really been refining it over the years. And all the stuff that we give you guys has come from prior experience where it's helped interns who have come before you. If we find something that doesn't help people, we just cut it. Because we know you guys got your classes, families, work, and you're taking this on as well. and we don't want to burden you with useless junk just to make you do something. So anytime we offer an assignment or have anything along those lines, it's for a specific purpose to help you guys out. Any questions? Been talking a while. Hey, you guys are dead. It's only week 2. All right. Cool. I don't think anyone's had their client meeting yet, have they? No? I think the first one's going on right now, actually, so. Okay. Well, we're just going to talk about some of the different kind of tips and stuff that go along with client meetings. So be sure to take notes. So if you don't have something to take notes out, please get something to take out notes. Because the stuff we're going to go over is going to be really important, and it's going to help you have a better first meeting to make the next 10 weeks of your life far easier. We've done this numerous times. We know how it goes. We know the pitfalls to avoid. And this stuff is to help you guys avoid that stuff. Cool. So kind of just starting off, we're kind of going back a little bit to the first initial training, doing professional meetings. A lot of it's pretty self-explanatory. We do like to cover it again though, just to make sure all our bases are covered. So just be sure you arrive early, right? Nothing crazy, 10 minutes. That way that if you've been on a phone call, you have time to set that up. If you're getting a conference room, you have time for that. Or if you're getting on a video call. Be sure to just overdress for the first meeting as well. It's always better to show up in a shirt and tie, and then your clients show up in jeans and a t-shirt, than for you to show up in a jeans and t-shirt and he's in a shirt and tie, because then you kind of look like an idiot, and we don't want that. Definitely you don't want that either. The next thing is stay on the conservative side of things. So we're talking about this at the beginning. If you're normally a real joking person, usually tone it down to more being conservative for these meetings, just because the clients, we don't necessarily know all their personal background and such, and the last thing we want to do is offend or come across as unprofessional to anyone. So it's better to always just lean on the side of caution rather than being a little bit too outspoken in some ways. Another one is when you're setting up the meeting with your client, just be sure that you're sending them the agenda. We have the templates online. You can find them in your intern resources folder. So we want to send those out a day in advance. Junior analysts, you can either do that or assign someone in your team to do that. Be sure to CC your project manager on the email. And then when you're coordinating with your client for a time to talk, be sure to send them a whole list of options. Because if we get in that whole back and forth, when are you free? Oh, that's the work for me. What about this day? Oh no, how about this? It's very unprofessional, and it just is very sloppy. So instead, if we look on the calendar beforehand, send them 3 to 4 options, then it's just far easier, and then they're more confident in you guys already because you're coming across professionally. Last thing, if you're doing a Google Hangout or a conference call, be sure you have that set up beforehand, and that you also put that same information in your Google Calendar invite. So if you're doing a Google Hangout, while you're creating the Google Calendar, you can just click Add Video Hangout, and it automatically creates it. So all you have to do is open up the calendar event, click Join, and you're in. Super easy. Don't have to worry about sending links or any of that messy stuff. Similarly, if you have to do a conference call, I know some of the companies prefer that, just for security and whatnot. We like to use freeconferencecall.com. You just make a profile, super easy, it doesn't cost you anything. And then you just want to send in that event detail, usually says where, you can type in an address. In this case, you just want to type in the free conference call number, and then the login number or the room ID, I think is what it's called. That way you don't have to try emailing them an hour beforehand. They just already have it in their Google Calendar, real easy. That way anyone who's invited can find it right then and there. One thing I would add to that, actually, if you're doing a Google Hangout, I would strongly recommend that you consider using some sort of phone call for the audio. Just from our prior experience, whenever people have done a Google Hangout or some other screen sharing type thing, the audio has always been kind of spotty. People haven't been able to hear. Usually the microphone on people's laptops are not the best. But we have some really top-end audio equipment for phone calls that's built for conferences, and it's way more reliable than the internet. As well as if you have a bunch of people trying to get on here, it gets pretty spotty and it's crappy in some ways. So, last thing, if you have a client who's coming here in person, then you'll just want to make sure that you have one of the conference rooms. So if you have an open spot with Will on the internship calendar, you'll have a conference room. You'll be just fine. But you want to be sure to be early, kick anyone out if they're in there not doing a client meeting, as well as just clean it up, get some waters. We have some waters in the back that, remember we showed you, it's like near Teresa's office. It's just around the corner. There's some water bottles in there. If you need them, we'll show you. If they're coming in person as well, print off your agendas and then leave your backpacks in another room, just because it just going with like a notebook. It just comes across much more professional, that you know what you're doing, rather that you're still in school. Yeah, that was a lot.
Anybody have any questions or clarification or anything?
You can always watch the video again.
Yeah.
No questions? You guys good? All right.
Okay.
Go to the next one.
I'm gonna go over some of the phone and video etiquette when we're in client meetings. And so you should do a lot to prepare for the meeting. Like Seth said, you should share with them the information for the call or the video well in advance, just so everything is ready. You want to make sure that your computer or the phone that you're going to be using works. You want to make sure that the microphone and the camera are set up so that they're ready to go. And whatever program you're using is downloaded, updated, or whatever you need to do well before the meeting starts. I think the last thing you want is to try to pull up whatever program you're using right before the meeting and have it update for a few minutes and then end up being late or something. Obviously for a phone meeting, you don't have to dress up, maybe unless you're coming here at the RBDC. But when you are on a video call, you should be dressed up professionally as if the client was there. And then you want to join around 5 minutes before the meeting starts along with your team, just so you can ask any final questions with your team members before the client joins on. The junior analyst should send over the agenda as an attachment and to everybody in your team along to the client. And then before the meeting starts, you should do your research and prepare for the meeting so that you have questions ready to go to ask the client. And then always say your name when you're talking on the phone. So say, this is so-and-so, and this is my comment, this is my question, just so they know who you are. I'll give you guys a second to write those down before we move on. Does anybody have questions about those? Yeah.
What are some pitfalls you've actually experienced?
I would say, just the other day we had a client meeting with HDMI, one of our clients, and there was some people on the conference call on the other end, and they were driving in the car, and so you could hear like the wind or something. It was like really broken up. And so one of the other clients was trying to explain what he wanted us to do, but we couldn't hear a word he was saying. And so I would just add that if there's ever a time where you can't, like nobody can hear what the client is saying, it would be appropriate to say, wait a second, we can't, it's kind of broken up. Let's fix this. So the person that was like driving in the car had to mute their phone.
Yeah, I had another one to go alongside that. So I had a project I was working with, I think it was 2 semesters ago, and the client told the team he wanted to use Zoom instead of like Google Hangouts. And then when we got there, the junior analyst didn't realize he had to download some software for it because he didn't look into it. So about 1 minute before we were supposed to be on the call, he was downloading the program, which was really stressful. So yeah, so just little things like that. Make sure you're prepared, and that like Connor was saying, all these other stuff to watch out for.
Yeah, if something isn't working right, make sure you stop the meeting and say, let's fix this, whatever you need to do. I guess if there's no questions, I'll move on. So during the meeting, like I said, sit with a professional background. So maybe most of the RBC would be appropriate. Maybe not in the library or in the MC or places like that, because there'd be a lot of background noise, a lot of distractions. And you want to make sure that on your end it's the best quality possible. You don't want anything going on behind you that yourself or the client will be distracted by. When you're not talking, make sure you mute your microphone. Sometimes it's also useful to wear headphones or like earbuds, so there's no sound getting mixed up with things like echoing. If you don't understand something, it's absolutely appropriate to ask for questions. And a lot of times the projects involves things that we don't understand. And so if you want the client to clarify something or to explain something, it would be appropriate to ask more about that, just to make sure that you're going to be able to do the project for them. Also, don't play with your hair or have your hands on your face. You just want to look professional and be engaged in the meeting. So mostly the junior analysts will do a lot of the talking, but research associates can make comments here and there if they feel like they have something valuable to say or any questions that they'd like to ask.
Does anyone have any questions about? Yes.
Just during the meeting, if we want to record their conversation, it's probably polite to ask them.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Because I would be tempted to just not do that and record anyway.
Yeah, so that's definitely a great tip, actually. I was going to say that we've had people in the past ask their clients if they can record the conversation. That way they can refer back to it later. And I've never had someone say no. So definitely ask. I highly recommend that. Kind of just going off, well, before I keep talking, does anyone else have any other questions so far? Or comments, maybe the tips that you've seen in prior meetings? No? Okay. So I just had a couple other things I wanted to touch on. They weren't on the slideshow. I just wrote them down beforehand. So I think we touched on it, but one of the big ones was be sure that you guys have some questions before you go into the meeting. That's one of the big mistakes that a lot of interns make, is that they just do a little bit of research about the company, briefly look over the scope, and then they're just going to try to wing it when they go into the meeting. And the thing to understand about these meetings is that they are your meetings. It's not my meeting. It's not Connor's. It's definitely not Will's meeting. It's your guys' meeting. So you're going to be the ones who kick off the meeting. You're going to be the ones who welcome the client. You'll be the ones who start introducing people, and then everyone will kind of introduce themselves. And you're going to be the ones who start talking with them and figuring out what they want. Your project manager and Will are there as support to help you guys in case you miss something or forget about something. Yes.
What are some productive questions that you've seen people ask?
A lot of the times it's more of just like clarifying. So like that example we did, that kind of little role play up front, when they're like, oh, I want to know this. And you say, okay, well, like, do you want to know like a specific type of competitor, or is there a specific consumer you're trying to target, or just different kind of, every project's a little bit different, but definitely like just trying to narrow down the scope. So if you guys remember, usually the clients have this big broad picture of what they want, especially if you have your scopes already and you read it. Who's got their scope? Raise your hand. Yeah. Who's read their scope? Raise your hand. Yeah. How like specific are they? Yeah, they're like, maybe probably not. Usually they're pretty vague, right? Pretty broad. Yeah, so your questions want to help target that, which is why we want you guys to help do the research plan beforehand, because that gets you already brainstorming and thinking about how would I want to narrow this down. Like that one with the Italian restaurants. They went from, I want to see if people like Italian food, to I want to see 5 specific locations on the East Coast for people who would be interested in quick serve Italian restaurants with cities of these sizes. Right? You could research that. But the first one, where it's like super vague, you don't know where to start. And that's where a lot of people tend to get tripped up, is they don't know where to start when they start doing their research, because they didn't ask enough questions in the client meeting. So be sure that you are thinking ahead of time of the questions to ask them, and just start brainstorming. And you won't be able to think of everything beforehand, of course not, but at least you'll have an underlying and foundation of kind of, some ideas that you can build upon. I got some more. Do you have anything else?
Yeah. I know there's already a bullet point on there that says take detailed notes, but usually you should take a lot of notes. It's better to take more notes than too little notes. Don't think that you can like remember things because you'll probably forget it. And so just write everything down that you can so that you can refer back to it later.
Yeah. So, yes, like I was saying, the first big mistake that people make is they go in without questions prepared. Second big one that Connor just said, they never take notes. You'd be surprised how many interns go into these meetings and they don't take notes. It's kind of ridiculous. So if I see you not taking notes, I'm going to call you out on it. I'm sure Connor and David will as well. And if you think you're taking enough notes, just take more. Because it's far easier to be able to refer back to those than to have to send 12 emails to your client trying to clarify something. Right? It's just huge time waster. It's not fun. It's just annoying. So if you're coming across something and you don't fully understand what your client wants, be sure to ask him to clarify it. Especially if, like Connor was saying, someone's got some background noise and you can't hear them. It is super fine, totally normal to say, I'm sorry, there's some background noise. Can you say that again? Rather than saying, yeah, I got it. And you're like, what did he say? Right? I'm going to slap you upside the head if you do that. Yeah, so definitely take those notes. Everyone on your team should be taking notes. Just to clarify, that's not a junior analyst's responsibility. That's everyone's responsibility. Because everyone's going to pick up something a little bit different. Let's see. What else did I have? Kind of just going along, taking notes. Don't pretend to know what's going on if you don't know what's going on. Right? If your client says, oh, blah, 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 do you understand? You're like, uh-huh. Huge error. Don't ever do that. If you're not sure, it's totally fine to just say, actually, I'm not sure. Can you clarify that? I'm confused about X. They would far rather have you say that than afterwards you're all trying to talk to figure out what the heck is going on. Let's see. I think that's about it. Oh, one last little tip. If your client's coming into the building in person, we have the 2 conference rooms. The one up front, that's the little one. And then we have that big one in the back with the big projector. If you're using the one in the back, you need to have one of your team members wait at the front to guide your client to the back, or else they don't know where they're going, right? I'm sure when you guys came here for your interviews, everyone was like, most of the people were kind of confused about where they're going. Your client will be confused too if you don't have someone up at the front. Yeah? Capiche. Any other questions, guys? There's nothing silly. Usually someone else has the same question as you. We'd rather just answer it now if you got one. No? Great. You guys are set?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
So with the conference calls, we can use this place for those videos.
Yep. Yeah, so if you're doing a conference call, that's a great question, thank you. If you guys have a conference call, you still need to come here. So that way we can all sit together and do the call online or over the phone, whatever, together in the same room. So that doesn't give you the ability to sit at home in your pajamas. Sorry. If you have like a real conflict, like you're in Idaho Falls for some reason 5 minutes beforehand, just let us know, and that'll be okay. But just because you want to stay home, that's not okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. It just helps a lot more when we can all be in the same room, especially on the phone. It's kind of nice because you can put it on mute, kind of talk with each other a little bit. You can't really do that if everyone's at their house. So, same with if you're doing a video conference, be here. Any other questions, guys? Not hold your peace. All right, let's go. You guys can laugh or something. Great. Other than that, just be sure that if you got your scope, you should have already have a meeting set up. If you don't, get on that ASAP. If you don't have your scope, work on the background research for your client, and you start brainstorming just a little bit like, oh, if I was this company, what are some aspects? It's super broad, I know, but it just kind of helps a little bit. And then we'll get you your scopes as soon as we can, working with the clients. So if not, that's all we had for you guys today. So thanks for coming. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask him. If not, then there's always Slack. And you can message us later on. So, great. Thanks, guys. Free to go.